Hello everyone, I'm Lise Gorkas from Page One Publishing and Douglas Magazine. Douglas is an award-winning business brand. We provide insightful and in-depth coverage of local business news, trends, and issues here on Vancouver Island. And we also publish the popular brands Yam Magazine and Spruce Magazine. It's my pleasure today to introduce the next session, which is called Magic Happens When Arts and Business Converge. And in this session, we'll all learn more about the first ever arts impact study that's just been released and what opportunities there are for business and the arts to collaborate. So it should be very interesting. We are very delighted to sponsor this session and to support the summit and the island economy. So I hope that you'll connect with myself or my team over the next couple of days. We do want to hear your stories, and we'd love to share with you what marketing opportunities we have for your business or organization. So enjoy.
Welcome to Magic Happens Where Art and Business Converge. I'm Kristi Rivait of Scale Collaborative, and I will be your moderator for today's session. I am joining you today from the traditional territories of the Lekwungen peoples, including Songhees and Esquimalt nations. I feel honored and blessed to live and work here. Today's session is going to be excellent, and I want to extend a big thank you to Douglas Magazine, who is sponsoring our session today. Let's learn who our panelists are. We've got Kera, McHugh, Community Engagement Director at Comox Valley Arts. We've got Louisa Plant, Consultant at Nordicity and Social Impact Lead for Digital Innovation Group Impact Assessment. Chad Rickaby, Manager at Nordicity and Economic Impact Lead for the Digital Innovation Group Impact Assessment. Susan Moeller, the Chair of the North Vancouver Island Arts Society. Jacqueline East, who helps the Southern Gulf Islands Tourism Partnership manage community development and marketing for the 5 islands: Maine, Galliano, Pender, Salt Spring, and Saturna. And finally, Ken Blackburn, Executive Director of Campbell Rivers Art Council and Program Manager at the Museum at Campbell River. So let's get into it. I'm going to pass it over to Kera, who is going to MC the video. Kera, over to you.
Good morning. I'm Kera McHugh from Comox Valley Arts. Thank you so much for attending today's session. As Kristi mentioned, I'll be walking us through the first part of this session. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that I'm joining you from the unceded traditional territory of the Comox First Nation. I'm here today representing the Digital Innovation Group, or DIG, and we're a collaboration of 6 arts councils from across Vancouver Island and the Gulf Islands that formed in the fall of 2019. Our members collectively live, work, and play on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Kwakwaka'wakw, Nuu-chah-nulth, and Coast Salish peoples. To begin, we're very honored to have Jane Marston open our presentation.
Greetings. I would like to introduce myself. My name is Jane Marston. My Coast Salish name is Kwatlamat. I am from Ladysmith. I was born and raised in Ladysmith, and at the present time I live in Duncan. I was invited here to say an opening prayer for the conference, so I would like it if you would please calm yourself down, collect yourself, and just be silent for a second. God the Creator, I ask you to be present at this conference, and I ask you to guide each person as they speak with respect, love, and compassion. So I think it's important for us all to come together and to talk and to negotiate and to share. And I think that art is life, and life is art. And without art, we would cease to be as a human being or as a community.
Thank you so much, Jane. The timing of today's session couldn't be better. because we've just completed a groundbreaking arts impact study in the Vancouver Island and Gulf Islands super region. The punchline of this study is that we can rightfully now call ourselves an arts and culture powerhouse. Up until now, we had a hunch this was true, but no data to back it up. The arts sector is a significant economic driver and fundamental to our super region's vitality, well-being, and resilience. It follows then that there's never been a better time for arts and business to collaborate, which is why this session's title contains the word magic. We're excited to share our data and our stories. As a treat, towards the end of this presentation, we'll be hearing from a few special guests. So let's get the ball rolling. When we first proposed this session to VIEA President George Hansen, he asked, everybody knows arts and culture is important to an economy, but what's happening now that requires our attention? So thanks for that nudge, George. That's helped us to clarify a fair bit. So here's what's different. We now have incredible data that qualifies and quantifies our value and our impact in each community across the island. We're organized and connected. We've just completed this 2-year digital collaboration and innovation project and are now expanding to include other sectors. More on that later in this presentation. And we're ready to be at your table, and we want you to be at ours. We recognize that it's valid that we've been less included or less recognized as contributors because we haven't been ready to step into that role, and now we are. So why are we talking about synergies between business and the arts? Because there's huge untapped potential here. There's a world of mutually beneficial opportunities to be explored across sectors and geographical boundaries within our super region. So here are some things that you may not know. We know a lot about creating meaningful connections with stakeholders and designing emotionally powerful experiences. We speak a different impactful language. We're natural design thinkers, and we bring different creative solutions to complement other disciplines. We offer a wide variety of mediums for connecting with audiences. We're a huge local talent pool hidden right in plain sight. And we're entrepreneurs and risk takers just like you. It's all well and good to tell you how wonderful we think we are, however, but why don't we dive right into the data that proves it? I'll hand you over to Chad Rickaby and Louisa Plant from Nordicity's Vancouver office, who conducted our impact study this summer.
Today, Louisa and I are presenting the findings of Nordicity's research for the arts impact assessment in the super region, including Vancouver Island and the Gulf Islands. We will present the findings first as they relate to social and community impacts, and then report on the broad economic benefits and value to local businesses. We will also include some case studies and a forward-looking discussion on potential opportunities. By way of a brief introduction to Nordicity, we are a global consulting firm that regularly does impact studies and cultural plans around the world and locally, with recent experience across the super region. Louisa and I are joining you from our Vancouver office, where we are grateful to live, work, and play on the unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples. Before handing it over to Louisa, I wanted to touch briefly on the response rates for the survey for which we are reporting on. While more detailed statistics can be found in the full report, the survey received more than 1,500 responses from across the region. These included approximately 800 artists and 150 cultural organizations, as well as more than 160 responses from local business representatives. The responses skewed towards older and female respondents, a very common trait for an online survey in the arts. I will now pass it on to Louisa to describe the important social and community impacts.
Thank you, Chad. Regarding social and community impacts, the survey responses showed that people are participating in a wide variety of ways across the super region. Here are some headline stats. 77% interact with digital content and 68% create art several times a week or more. Large numbers are frequently working, volunteering, or collaborating with cultural organisations. 69% said that they attend arts and cultural events more than once a month, and additionally, on average, respondents indicated spending roughly $300 per year on consuming art and culture across Vancouver Island and the Gulf Islands. We asked participants to rate their agreement with a series of statements about the impact of the local arts sector, from strongly agree to strongly disagree. This graph shows the average scores and ranking from the statements that were most strongly agreed with at the top to least strongly agreed with at the bottom. Survey participants strongly agreed with most statements, and 97% agreed that the arts sector improves individual quality of life and well-being. Also, nearly everyone agreed that the arts create opportunities for personal learning. The statement with the least agreement was that the local arts sector nurtures employment skills. There was almost unanimous agreement that the local arts sector attracts visitors to the community as a tourist destination, creates appreciation and demand for the arts, helps create a distinct identity, and provides a shared sense of belonging within the community. Respondents were in the least agreement with the statement that the local arts and culture sector contributes to reconciliation between Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities, although 83% agreed that it does. Building stronger connections such as these was identified as a key area of importance, which we will talk about shortly as an opportunity area. So diving deeper, what does this mean? Our findings show significant non-economic benefits of the arts. To review these in more detail, we triangulated the findings from the interviews, focus groups, and survey results alongside relevant existing literature. To do this, we drew upon the work of Francois Matarasso, a community artist, writer, and researcher who developed a thematic framework of 6 impacts of the arts, looking at over 60 arts initiatives in different locations worldwide. We found these themes related strongly to our findings and used them to analyse the data. I will briefly talk to you about these different impacts and how they relate to our findings. 97% of survey respondents agreed strongly that the arts sector in their community improves personal well-being, mentally and physically, making this the most prominent social impact. Our participants described how the arts improve quality of life by contributing to personal independence, confidence, and pride. They also have a powerful therapeutic role in improving mental health outcomes. Interviewees described the physical and mental health benefits that the local arts sector creates, as it encourages people to get out and alongside others in the community. Some also describe partnerships with local hospitals and art councils, for example, Campbell River Arts Council working with patients with brain injuries. Now, regarding social cohesion, 95% of respondents agreed that the local sector provides a shared sense of belonging within the community. There was almost unanimous agreement, with 93% agreeing that the arts and culture sector in the super region connects communities and builds understanding between people from different cultural backgrounds. The arts can encourage new partnerships and intersector collaboration and cooperation. However, several research participants across the region also described how there are currently some silos between sectors, which we will speak to later. Regarding personal development, this relates to change at an individual level, including increased confidence, education and skills, and growing personal social networks. 98% of participants said that the local arts sector is creating these opportunities for personal learning. Interviewees and roundtable participants described how the art is a medium for experimentation and innovation, leading to new opportunities and solutions for social challenges. The local arts sector encourages deep and alternative ways of thinking, as well as positive introspection that can lead to a more profound understanding of others as well as of oneself. Now, community empowerment. This can be understood as organisational capacity building, consultation, involvement in democratic processes, and support for community-led initiatives. Participants described how the local arts sector is active in the region with very high levels of volunteering and some dynamic community partnerships. These empower communities by making them more vibrant and inclusive places to live. On an individual level, participation in the local arts and culture sector connects people to others and helps them to feel a positive shared sense of ownership where they live. The sector can also raise challenging questions and inspire discussion around difficult topics in a way that's very different to political discourse. They can encourage communities to work together to confront issues of collective importance, which are urgent, such as truth and reconciliation and climate change. Now, with local image and identity, 94% of survey participants agreed that the local arts sector helps to create a distinct identity, making this one of the top 3 impacts. Interviewees and focus group participants described the sector's active role in downtown renewal projects across the region and how this offers wide benefits to the community, including impacts for local business owners as well as residents. In doing so, it creates uniqueness and more reasons to visit. Last but not least, no discussion of the impact of the arts would be complete without talking about imagination and vision. This concerns creativity, professional practice, and positive risk-taking. Participants described how the local arts sector on Vancouver Island and the Gulf Islands inspires new ways of thinking and creative solutions as individuals challenge themselves and others to try new things. Artists are thought leaders with an almost clairvoyant ability to perceive issues of emerging and future importance and to convey them to others. Now, over to Chad for an outline of the economic impact of the arts.
Thanks, Louisa. Speaking now to the profile of the arts ecosystem and its economic impacts to the region. The research identified more than 1,100 organizations, which were largely made up of smaller, mature groups operating in the visual arts and live performance areas. The average revenue for these organizations was nearly $150,000 in 2019, operating mostly as nonprofits with very thin margins. Importantly, organizations noted expending a significant majority of their costs on local suppliers, helping to drive local impacts through minimizing economic leakage from dollars being spent outside the region. To help maximize community impact on a small budget, organizations rely on the valuable input of volunteers. Organizations noted that they engaged an average of 40 volunteers in 2019, which can be valued at $115 million using industry standard wages and metrics for average volunteer hours. Speaking specifically to arts councils, the survey revealed similar findings relating to small operating budgets. Despite these resource challenges, they are able to play an important role as community conveners. In addition, they also generate important impact by leveraging funds from diverse sources and can help others achieve economies of scale through their ability to convene audiences. Through our grassroots method leveraging key informant estimates, the research approximates more than 35,000 artists in the region. Of those, survey results indicate that 60% generated revenue in 2019, suggesting that there are more than 20,000 revenue-generating artists in the region. These artists indicated average arts-related income of less than $20,000, with nearly 80% indicating they supplement their arts-related income with revenues from other sources. Cultural tourism is one of the fastest growing tourism segments in the world, with research suggesting that tourists with cultural motives stay longer and spend more than other types of tourists. 3/4 of organizations in the region that do have audiences welcomed an average of 2,000 tourists from outside the region in 2019. Taken together, artists, cultural organizations, and cultural tourism generated more than $900 million in direct economic activity in 2019. Using the BC Stats input-output model, this activity contributed more than $675 million in GDP and supported more than 20,000 jobs in the region. While comparing different approaches to economic impact assessments is inherently challenging, the economic activity from the arts is larger than key regional institutions such as Vancouver Island University, as well as notable industries such as Victoria's cruise ship economy or the regional dairy industry. In addition, estimates suggest it also supports more jobs than the region's large tourism sector. While the previous slides highlighted some of the macro level impact, the research also identified key ways that the arts benefit local businesses at a micro level. More than 90% of businesses agreed that arts make the community a better place to do business. Others strongly agreed that it generates networking opportunities and supports growth in tourism. More specifically, business representatives noted in interviews that the arts and culture sector creates demand for their business and increases spending on their products and services. Importantly, it was commonly noted that the arts makes communities more attractive for people to live and work. As cited in the quote there, this sense of place helps to encourage investment in the region. 9 in 10 respondents indicated spending money at local businesses before or after cultural events, averaging more than $60 per person per event. Based on audience estimates, this creates an additional $400 million being spent at local businesses per year by cultural audiences. As an additional example of the importance of the arts, 71% of those representing businesses indicated that arts and culture closures have negatively impacted their ability to generate revenue, with the largest cohort indicating that it has been a very significant impact, decreasing revenue by 50% or more. I will now pass it back to Louisa, who will add some more tangible case studies from other jurisdictions regarding their impact of the arts.
Now for 2 case studies on the integration of arts and business. I will talk you through the Northern Powerhouse strategy in the UK and Montreal's cultural metropolis vision. First, the Northern Powerhouse. This is a regional economic rejuvenation strategy in the UK that started in 2014 and is still ongoing. The strategy has involved 11 municipal divisions in the north of England, including several cities. Naturally, the context is different to Vancouver Island and the Gulf Islands, given the different population size and culture and history, but it is a strong example of how municipalities across the region can work together to build upon a shared identity, enriching communities and strengthening their competitiveness, both domestically and internationally. Individually, each of these municipalities was too small to compete on the world stage alongside London and other world cities, but working together they can pack a punch. There's a lot of famous arts and culture from the north of England. David Hockney, Henry Moore, Barbara Hepworth, Wordsworth, the Beatles, I could go on. But still, there was not as much tourism or investment compared to other areas of the country. The plan, therefore, was to help diversify the economy, which also included giving municipalities new powers over spending, improving transport infrastructure, more innovation and science funding, and, importantly, increased arts and culture funding. The strategy was promoted widely across the country to attract investment and visitors, with unified branding, as you can see here. The branding reiterates the distinct personality of the region. A key impact study with this was a report from Arts Council England, which showed that there was a great opportunity, but that the North was still not meeting the full potential of what it could achieve with more focused investment. The study informed governmental policy and galvanised support to attract more money for the region. Here are some of the outcomes so far. There has been a £20 million investment to help small and medium-sized enterprises or businesses across the region, and £13 billion transport investment. The Great Exhibition of the North attracted almost 4 million visitors, and 90% said that it changed perceptions for them of the region. There's also been a £15 million Northern Cultural Regeneration Fund, which has led to an additional nearly 300,000 people in employment and a £10 billion increase in the size of the economy already. Now, Montreal. For nearly 20 years, culture and creativity have been crucial to Montreal's economic development strategy. The ambition is for Montreal to become a world-renowned cultural metropolis, with the cultural and business communities as active participants. The first cultural policy was developed in 2005 and followed in 2006 by Montreal's successful bid to join the UNESCO Creative Cities Network. Montreal is one of UNESCO's 40 creative cities and has a specialism as a city of design. To support its efforts, Montreal established the Bureau of Design, which has enacted numerous initiatives to support the growth of creativity in the city. The vision to become a cultural metropolis has been supported by ongoing and evolving strategies, with creativity as a strategic focus for urban and economic redevelopment. The ambitious 2007 to 2017 Montreal Cultural Action Plan grew out of a cultural and business community gathering in 2007. This was followed by a new cultural development policy, which included cultural tourism as one of the key areas. Most recently, the Economic Development Strategy, Montreal Geared Up for Tomorrow, outlines the cultural and creative industries as a core strategic sector. These strategies have led to numerous positive outcomes, including the development of the Quartier des Spectacles cultural entertainment district. This major urban revitalisation project ensures that arts and culture have a significant place in the heart of the city. It hosts more than 40 cultural activities every day, so that's thousands per year, and free walking tours with an audience of 1.6 million spectators per year. Within it, there's La Vitrine, or Showcase, which shares information and tickets for nearly 2,000 cultural organisations in the city. The district has become a major hub for training, creation, production and presentation related to cultural media and digital work. The total economic impacts attributable to the creation of the projects within the quartier are believed to total between 1.5 to 1.6 billion, according to a 2015 study. The city has also created several other public squares, including an indoor public square for performances, investing in cultural quarters around the city, and providing artistic incubators and creation hubs. The city has also created a new boulevard to connect two previously isolated neighbourhoods, and has added monumental public artworks. Now, 1/4 of tourists visit Montreal for its cultural attractions. Looking ahead, I'm excited to speak to you about opportunities for arts and culture on the Vancouver Island and Gulf Islands. We have evidence that people want the arts in post-COVID recovery and will be willing to pay for it. We asked survey participants if they would consider making a personal contribution to the sector. This question follows the contingent valuation technique, or willingness to pay. 78% indicated that yes, they would. And of those, the majority indicated that they would be willing to pay more than $100. The estimated average willingness to pay in total was more than $200 per person. We also asked survey respondents what role they see arts and culture playing on Vancouver Island and the Gulf Islands in recovery from COVID-19 and beyond. Here are the biggest opportunity areas according to respondents. They are building community and a shared sense of identity, strengthening the unique identity and growing tourism and attracting new residents, and encouraging better health outcomes, both mental and physical. This brings us to 10 opportunity areas we see for the arts in the super region to support COVID recovery. Now, these are not part of a full strategic assessment, but a list of things we heard that could help advance the offer according to research participants. The first is to break down silos. This is both within the sector and between the sector and others. The arts need to be better integrated and reflected into the fabric of the community, and exploring new partnerships and collaborations also with the private sector could help. There's a need to address the over-reliance on volunteers. Volunteers are often an essential part of making things happen, demonstrating high civic engagement. However, insufficient funding for staffing means that there can be an over-reliance upon them. Coordinating volunteers requires significant administration time and can restrict organisation capacity and sometimes lead to burnout. Related to this point is the need for more sustainable funding sources. It is well understood that finding and securing funding is one of the greatest challenges that artists and arts organisations can face. Many participants felt that more cross-sector support, such as government funding, is required. This also ties in to the need to build new community art spaces. In some communities, there's insufficient public infrastructure, with some lacking spaces like galleries and also multi-use, multi-art spaces where different disciplines and people can overlap and meet. Creating such spaces could literally put arts and culture on the map, and also create a call to action as a place that visitors can go to. There's a need to create affordable housing and workspaces in the region. Affordability throughout the Vancouver Island and Gulf Island region is recognised as an ever-growing challenge. Creating more such spaces could enable artists to stay within desired creative hubs and to participate and contribute to the arts economy. Being priced out, however, can break valuable connections and make it difficult for artists and organisations to generate income. Regarding the 5 further opportunity areas, there's a need to bolster focus on equity, diversity and inclusion. COVID-19 brought to light key gaps in operations, particularly in this area, and there's a need and a strong desire to particularly connect with Indigenous artists and to support their work. This relates to the next point, which is around championing local artistic and cultural heritage. The region has an incredibly rich, exciting and valuable cultural heritage, from Northwest Coast and First Nations art to Pacific Northwest inspired art, and a long list of famous artists. Raising the profile and capacity of arts and culture in the super region has a strong potential to grow tourism, both locally, domestically and internationally. Now, regarding the opportunity to grow digital capacity and digital integration, while many arts councils and artists successfully moved various forms of content and programming online during COVID, the period has also highlighted how challenging digital adoption can be for many. One participant, for example, noted how many artists often don't see themselves as savvy business people, and that there is a strong need for digital skills training for artists and arts and cultural organisations to complement and grow the reach of their work. And this would also encourage more digital artistic exploration. Relating to the digital skills point, there's definitely a need and opportunity around sharing more and growing discoverability. There's a need to strengthen awareness of the benefits that arts and culture offered within the region, such as increasing well-being, and also the need to continually share up-to-date information about what is happening across the Vancouver Island and Gulf Islands region to encourage greater public engagement and participation. Also, last but not least, including arts and culture in tourism recovery strategies is a big opportunity area. Currently, the vibrant role that the arts could play in post-COVID resilience and recovery is somewhat overlooked by tourism strategies. Embedding arts and culture in strategies could attract more visitors, promote longer visitor stays, and drive more discretionary spending in communities, promoting community well-being and resilience even further. Thank you very much. Copies of this video and slide deck, as well as shareable infographics, are available at digarts.ca. We look forward to answering any questions that you have in the upcoming question and answer segment, and you're also very welcome to email Chad Rickaby, crickaby@nordicity.com with any other questions or comments.
Thanks, Chad. Thanks, Louisa. That was a lot to digest. The next natural step is to look more closely at what we can do right here at home and where the opportunities are. We've invited some special guests to briefly share their perspectives and hopefully spark some good conversation and inspiration in the Q&A later. The first local example we want to highlight is Victoria's bold plan to create an arts district in a part of town that is in transition from industrial to mixed use. We have a few clips to share from Frank D'Ambrosio, lead architect on this project and principal at D'Ambrosio Architecture and Urbanism.
One of the parts of the narrative of the project is, as the designated arts and innovation district that is foreseen by the city, this rezoning will set an example of how to embed arts and cultural institutions and infrastructure into commercial development. So it's an adjunct. Next to it will be an artist's live work rental building. And next to it will be a building called the Allied Industrial Arts Building, where makers of all kinds will be welcome and facilities done for them, like shipping elevators, drawing, painting, sculpture studios, right next door to a new art gallery. So we're absolutely embedding arts and culture into a commercial development that has residential and so on. So that idea is gaining traction, but what has to happen is artists have to be invited to the table along with architects, which is an argument I've always made, because it's not the artwork that you're inviting to the table, it's a way of thinking. It's a way of thinking. So the creative act has certain ingredients that require a certain kind of way of thinking and a certain expertise. So an artist sitting at the table, or an engineer, a structural engineer, or a biologist, or all these people that we bring together, especially when we talk about large urban projects, all these people have a different point of view because they spend all their waking hours focused on a certain aspect of physical and of spiritual life, whatever it may be. So they bring that point of view, and an artist's point of view being part of a project, out of that will emerge something unthought of, right? It's much different than buying a piece of artwork and installing it as part of a public space or as part of a building lobby or whatever. That has some certain kind of legitimacy, but it's not the way artists are going to be be embedded in the performance of urban life. I think the arts, performing arts, visual arts, are both a barometer and a harbinger for sociocultural progress. I think that artists speak for a society in ways that are prescient, and they also reflect the gestalt of the time, the morality of the time, if you will. And I think it's important that that have a voice and a presence in human settlement in the city. I think it's important that those expressions that come out of those conversations of artists among themselves and among us all are things that we should be thinking about, and things that express what we are and what we aspire to be. So that's why I think art is seminal to civilization. That's essentially it. So it needs a place of honor, it needs sponsorship, it needs support, and it needs integration into everything.
Next, we're going to hear from Lynn Robert, CEO of Island Coastal Economic Trust. After 12 years in her position, she's gained a fantastic bird's eye view of collaborative opportunities and potential.
I see the arts as being a human asset that's available in our communities that's been underexploited. And so, and the beauty of the arts is that it's also sustainable. You know, the art sector is highly sustainable. It doesn't have a huge impact on the environment. And it is something which can, you know, be integrated into a lot of other things. It can be integrated into revitalization. It can be integrated into business. It can be integrated into public amenities, and you know, there's just so much potential there. But the true potential is in the human asset, which is just lying there dormant in communities and not being, you know, I don't want to say exploited or leveraged, because that's not the right word, but I want to say valued and used. So we thought that with the Thrive program, even though, you know, I mean, we're not offering with this program hundreds of thousands of dollars for very major projects, but $50,000 is available to communities to develop something which will add excitement to their downtown core. So outdoor amenities that will drive people and interest into the community. And so, you know, we want to see excitement, imagination, and our suggestion was for communities to work, you know, local government, business community, and arts work together to come up with the great ideas. You know, the local government, because they usually have the domain over the physical spaces and they must authorize the appropriate uses. The business community, because they can benefit from these changes, and the arts sector, because they have the ideas. And often the ideas are not necessarily high ticket price. You know, there's a lot of creativity there and ways to transform the physical outdoor environment to make it more interesting for people. But our hope is that whatever gets done now gets surpassed by the next community, that there's a little bit of that competitive atmosphere and that, you know, like creative cooperation, I would say, you know, co-opetition rather, so that you get, you know, communities saying, hey, wait a minute, you know, people want to go there because they have this, we can do better. We have, you know, this rich heritage or cultural asset or cultural history or this amazing artist that's going to help us do better. And so my vision is that, you know, a few years down the line, if we have enough communities on the island and on the coast doing this, the cumulative impact of all of those little things in those downtown commercial areas will be greater than the sum of the parts. And that's what we're hoping, that, you know, it'll eventually maybe turn into these these cultural tours. You know, we've all traveled and we've all been to some weird little place because in the guidebook it says there's this weird, funky, fun little thing that you can do there. And we've all made those side trips. And so that's what I'm hoping we can generate here, to help sustain not just the arts and to bring it to the fore, but to, you know, make our communities livable again and make people want to enjoy the outdoors, not just on trails and on the ocean, but in our communities also.
Our next guest is Karen Bannister, Director of Destination Marketing for Tourism Vancouver Island. Her background in performing arts and marketing adds depth to her thoughts on stronger integration between the arts and tourism sectors.
First, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be able to talk about two things that I love, tourism and arts and culture in one segment. I'm very fortunate to be coming to you today from the traditional unceded territory of the Snanawas First Nation. So I wanted to acknowledge that. I do think it's a prime opportunity, and I congratulate you on all of this amazing work that you have done to try to better tell the story of the arts communities and individual artists on Vancouver Island and the Gulf Islands. What a huge undertaking, but it's really valuable, I think, for starting conversations. I think oftentimes in tourism, people think about the larger organizations in the world that drive tourism. So for example, in Canada, we might say the Stratford Festival, which we would call a destination driver because people are most often going to Stratford specifically for that experience. But we often don't shift the conversation towards the ways in which arts organizations and individual artists actually are the people and the entities that are creating the identity of the destinations that we're representing when we're out there marketing Vancouver Island and the Gulf Islands. And that's an important role that needs to be acknowledged because we know from our own travel research that people want authentic travel experiences. And those authentic travel experiences, those authentic snapshots of what a community is, oftentimes are set by, or I believe set by, our arts and cultural community. And I would use an example. You go to Gabriola Island, you know that you're on the Isle of Arts. You know that you're going to be able to visit artist studios and experience artisans in coffee shops and other stores and places that you might be camping or staying, because it's such an integration into that identity, and it's part of making Gabriola what Gabriola is. So with regard to how do we work better together, the arts organizations and sector, as well as tourism, I think it's an opportunity to see what resources we have that can be incorporated with the resources that you as arts councils and organizations that represent artists have, to be able to provide skills and sort of like infrastructure to the individual artists and arts organizations themselves. I think that's a really important one. And one thing I did want to mention, because I think that it's really important to consider, I know one of your objectives is to look at ways that businesses, for-profit businesses, can better support artists as well, is we should never forget the value of the arts in the development of actual places like downtown cores. And those are what our tourists are looking for, authentic experiences. Because we always say in tourism, a great place to live is a great place to visit. And we partnered most recently with Victoria as well to try to tell the message of, as you are as well, the value of our industry and how it contributes to the development of other industries around us as they benefit from the people that come to visit. The thing about beautifying spaces with outdoor art or creating artists opportunities like art galleries and performing arts stages in hubs or cores of a community is that you're giving more and more authentic community identificational, that's not a word, community, so reasons for people to go and interact with this sort of identity of a community. And that's that authenticity piece that really is what tells the story of who and what that community is. And when people travel, one of the main motivators for leisure travel is they want their perspectives to be shifted. They want to be shook outside of their normal day-to-day life. Like if you think of all your reasons for traveling and choosing places to visit, it's oftentimes about, yeah, I want to de-stress, I want to spend time with family or a loved one, but I also want to experience something that's not part of my life every day. And oftentimes that's a perspective shift. And that primarily comes from our arts and our cultural institutions. And when you collect them into a place where our visitor counselors and our marketing can send them to consistently, it just gives an opportunity for them to, really engage and walk around and participate in a community in one central place. And it beautifies, it creates a cascade of impact on all of those businesses like cafes and restaurants and pubs and brew pubs and breweries, and activity providers that is just really beneficial and healthy for all of us.
A huge thanks to our guests for taking the time to share their insights and wisdom with us. We really appreciate it. One tangible example of a business and art collaboration is the Malahat Skywalk, a new destination that's getting a lot of local and global attention. We spoke with General Manager Ken Bailey in advance of this presentation, and he told us the project team understood from the get-go that arts and culture would play a big role in the design of the experience. Now that the venue is open, it turns out the artistic contributions are playing a bigger role than they could have imagined. They engaged local artists John Marston and Tanya Bubb and have woven their artistic contributions throughout the site. The Skywalk project will continue to integrate art over time, and they're also working on creating a carving workspace to support young carvers to learn new skills and access engaged audiences, which is super exciting. So that just about wraps up our presentation. Ha-ha! Before we move into the roundtable discussion and Q&As, I want to tell you a little bit more about the Digital Innovation Group. As I mentioned earlier, we are 6 arts councils from around the islands that have been working together since fall of 2019, thanks to a grant from the Canada Council for the Arts Digital Strategy Fund. The original purpose of DIG was to explore how technology can support our sector to be more connected, collaborative, and innovative. We came together already believing that we were an arts and culture powerhouse, and so got to work putting vital digital infrastructure in place so we could act like one. Through that work, we identified that most of us have become used to working in silos, and with just a little push into new territory, technology, we could do so much more together. That got us to this minute, where we now connect monthly with all 25 arts councils in our super region and are beginning to build capacity, programming, and advocacy to support our sector and bridge to others. This is the first time these organizations have come together in this way, and we can't wait to see where we go from here. We would really like you, the business, economic development, and tourism sectors, to join us. Going forward, Creative Coast will take over from DIG as the ad hoc connection hub for our super region's art sector, while at the same time exploring new and innovative ways to collaborate. If you're interested in continuing to talk about anything we've presented here today, please visit creativecoast.ca and connect to us.
Hello. Hi, thank you everyone for that excellent presentation. That was really, really informative. So this part, we'll open it up to the audience for different questions and conversation. And we'll have about 10 minutes right now in this part of the session. And then, of course, we'll do a deeper dive if people would like to stay on for, another 45 minutes to really sort of talk into a deeper dive through a roundtable. So maybe I'll open it up. I'll thank you. They've sort of put, if you want to put put any questions you have in the chat box. I'll make sure to see those and ask the panelists. So maybe we'll sort of start off, and would love to ask Jacqueline, how do you sort of see this data? It was really interesting, building off where we just were with that presentation, being important for town and city planners.
Well, thanks for that question. I think it validates what we're thinking. I really appreciated Frank D'Ambrogio's presentation. I think as a planner, I'm in that same kind of design profession field. So I really think that the artist's deep connection to life is really that ideal conduit to all the considerations of our economy. So what I really appreciate about this data is it puts the numbers on it. And sometimes, to talk to different sectors, we need those numbers. So the arts, there's no separation, right? The economic, the social, the ecosystems, it's all about the world we inhabit. I love that comment earlier about art is life. And so it's the perfect grounding for our community development projects.
So building off that part of where Frank D'Ambrogio was sort of talking, it was really interesting, and how he was sort of saying that when you bring to the table the architectures and the engineers, you should have the artists. If there's city planners here joining us today, is there any considerations or how do they even begin to think about what type of artists to bring into a particular project? Do you have any thoughts around, or I'll open that up to the whole panel, around like, where do they start to think about that from a city perspective? If they do want to do something, how do you know what type of artist or where to find those artists?
Well, I'd love it if there's another planner to jump in besides me, but I'm happy to, I'll maybe give it a second. Is anyone looking keen? Well, I gotta start. I'm talking about community, the type of artist. It's really a way of thinking, as Frank said. So it's not a type of artist. It could be in the visual arts or the performance arts. That to me doesn't matter. It's a way of thinking that's very different to be at the table. So for instance, an example I could use is the work with the Southern Gulf Islands, where it's coming into community development as tourism as a mechanism for communities to develop. So instead of talking about branding, we want to talk about identity. And that's what you keep hearing about coming from the artists. And we don't want to talk about tourism as much as we want to talk about that placemaking or sense of place. And again, it's the artists that really bring that perspective. Now, how to communicate, we do have some language to learn, I think, so that we can all talk about the same things. I've certainly been in meetings or in situations where I am challenged to make my case to the artists about the important voice that they have in our community building or our city building. So I don't know if that helps, that idea.
I think that's really, really great. Thank you. One, I want to make sure I always get to the audience questions as well. So we have a questions from the audience around what opportunities exist to use art to promote value-added wood products. So this could really help in transitioning the forest industry and avoid social and mental issues for those involved. The Malahat Skywalk is a great example. Of really using that mass timber and value-added wood products. It involves architects, builders, and artists. So the question was around what opportunities exist to use arts to promote value-added wood products.
I can speak just briefly to that. I'm personally not an artist, but I think one of the places where there's a connection that needs to be made is the transference of information. Like, value-added wood products are awesome, but I bet there's lots of artists who don't actually know what that is. So what we need to do is create those kind of connections to allow the industry or the business sector to actually get their information to the artists and vice versa, so that we can help to foster those kind of collaborations. Because I would say there's plenty of wood artists, particularly up here in the northern half of the island. There are so many artists who work with wood, and if they
are not easy, if we can't easily access sort of a value added wood product, I don't know what would count as a value added wood product myself. So having a way to share that information. So for example, if you want to talk about your value added wood product, why don't you hit up your local arts council and say, hey, I got this awesome product. Would any of your artists be interested in working with it? And let's see what there is out there that we can do together. That's what I would recommend. So that, and part of our whole purpose here is to start to foster those kind of collaborations, make the communication easier, find ways to share that information among the business community with the arts community, and help to grow it all together. Makes sense?
Yeah, thanks, Kara. So
if I could, I would add to that just quickly.
Chad.
I think one opportunity that's there as well, you know, in addition to sort of woodworking and the types of artists that work with that may be found through the arts councils is, you know, in relation to carving and the long tradition of First Nations work with carving and that different type of woodwork that I think Vancouver Island is famous for. I mean, it's really all around us, the beautiful carvings, whether it be, you know, high totem poles or different, you know, types of carvings that are often in the shops, and I think tourists look to that as well. So I think there's a big opportunity for that sort of value added wood product to perhaps be the sort of foundation of collaboration with First Nations as well.
I love that. Thank you, Chad. Now, just because of the time, I want to just quickly run through a couple of these questions. Just DIG is now Creative Coast. Yes?
Yes.
Is that how they find you? Like people are just trying to figure that out.
Creative Coast BC. DIG was the ad hoc group, and our funding has come to a close, and we're wrapping up the project right now. And out of that has blossomed Creative Coast, which is going to take on a much larger role in that way, as far as the connecting and the communicating and the providing of shared service models to the creative community, which we hope will then extend to bringing in the business community, industry community to work with us and share, you know, information, opportunities, collaborate on projects.
Mm-hmm. And there was a question around accessing a copy of that study. That was through you, wasn't it, Chad?
Yeah, feel free to email me directly or on digarts.ca. So that website also has the executive summary as well as infographics, and we can certainly share the full copy if that's desired. It is packed with data, about 80 pages full of data. So if you want the full report, let me know. But the executive summary is quite comprehensive and covers it all as well. So and again, that's on digarts.ca.
Thank you. And one other just quick question is around, what was the name of the new development in Victoria that will be including artist spaces?
That's a really good question. It's escaping me right this second. It's I'm sorry, I have to look it up.
Okay. You know, we've got lots of different questions here. I just want to make sure that we get to it. Now with Creative Coast, will that also have a lot of artists' voice at the table? There was just some question around, they were hoping to have some artists. So I know that behind the scenes when we were talking about this session and moderating, there was definitely artists that were involved in those conversations. And so I just wanted to make sure the audience all knew that artist voice is here, and some artists on here. And so here's a question that's quite interesting around, not all communities welcome all types and level of tourism. So how can the arts and projects to support the arts ensure the results serves to encourage the appropriate scale and type of tourism for a community?
I can definitely jump in just as a start, and I'm sure there's lots of ideas. So for all of the work that's gone into the identity for the Southern Gulf Island Tourism Partnership, it has been based on the arts, and that's sort of like what's happening. But where that came from is those communities, those 5 islands, they wanted to do regenerative tourism. They are in the Island Trust, so preserving and protecting the lands and the waters is important. They wanted engaging of the community, and they wanted it to be absolutely authentic. And so if you kind of put these together and we, you know, we worked with the communities and stakeholders to brainstorm and come up with it. Well, what rose to the surface are the arts, the creativity of the islands. That's what matters. That is the identity. So, so in this case, I feel that there can almost be no mistake. Now that we have, you know, we've got the website, southerngulfislands.com is up, where the Cozy Season Guide is about to be printed. I see Gord from Hemlock on this call. And so people will see how it is art in economy is what's happening, and those artists who are part of those communities they are the values of the kind of traveler that we want to invite to visit those precious communities. So it just works, right? And it's a bit intuitive and not very scientific, but I have a strong belief in it.
Now, did anyone else want to add to that? Thank you, Jacqueline.
Yeah,
Ken?
Yeah, just to quickly jump in, I think the key skill needed is a listening skill. I think when we talk about partnerships and getting, you know, sectors together, very quickly you do discover that the vocabulary and the kind of language that we use can be extremely diverse, from a business community or a social sector, you know, to an arts or cultural sector, to First Nations, etc. So I think it's really incumbent on everybody, of course, but especially on the art sector, to enter into these discussions and partnerships, to listen and just to encourage deep listening, because it is through the listening, I think, that you start to see where openings are for kind of progressive partnerships. And I don't want to say solutions, because solutions may come a little bit further down the conversation chain, but certainly in those initial discussions, just try to foster a listening skill and try to be empathetic as to what the other positions are, because the concerns of a business community, especially in difficult times, it can be quite distinct and quite unique. And I think that's true of every sector. So I think it's a fundamental truth, but one that's really worth reminding us from time to time is the absolute value of not talking, of listening. And I think that's what's been missing. And as we see great divides in culture right now and societies, I think people have stopped listening. So it's just to encourage, I think, the art sector to keep their ear to the ground, which I think traditionally they do. But to maintain that position of paying attention to the language that's around you and participating in that language.
Yeah. And I really like that, Ken, around, you know, the more we do spend time sitting around a table together and listening to each other, you know, we do learn each other's language, right? And those different places. And so that's a real way to get to those deeper partnerships. Now, we just got a moment left on this this part of the Q&A before we go into the roundtable. So I'd love to just ask Chad or Louise to wrap it up around, what was your favorite finding, like with the data? What was the most interesting thing that you noticed?
I'd say for me, my favorite finding is relating to the arts and kind of health, in terms of both, you know, like mental health, physical health, just kind of holistic well-being. So I know that there's been numerous studies which have shown the connection between the two, but out of the survey responses, it was 97% of respondents said that was, you know, that the arts strongly supports that in their local community. So that made it the most prominent social impact. And I think that it's important to keep that in mind when we're thinking, just not only in terms of the economic development angle, but in terms of social inclusion, well-being, you know, growth in a broader sense, to keep that in mind. And particularly in the context of COVID, and as communities are kind of coming back, things are reaching a new normal again. What does that kind of look like to focus on the well-being side of the arts?
Yeah. And often, you know, sometimes we forget to factor in, you know, the other side of that, of what the cost savings is, that when we do have communities that do feel well and are healthy and in mental, you know, mental well-being.
Yeah, absolutely. And with the kind of broader research that we did as well, because we did secondary research too, we looked at various studies, and most of them are saying that the kind of social return on investment based on different proxies and so forth is 5 to 1. So that's cost saving in other areas and via kind of additional benefits, whether it's education or, direct health outcomes like improving things like dementia, even, and sense of well-being.
Sounds great. Chad, did you have something that was your favorite finding of the study?
Yeah, I mean, as the quantitative person, I always have to advocate for my economic findings. And I think they're all my favorite. We're very happy with the findings and very excited. But I think it's interesting to think about what some of the key findings may be from different perspectives. And so from a business perspective, I think the findings around how much is being spent in the community before and after cultural events is very exciting. Up to $60, more than $60 per event, per person is that, that's huge. That's being spent at local restaurants, breweries, stores, all of that before. And so I think that really that sort of knock-on benefit is really encouraging. And to think about it from the economic development or the sort of planner's perspective, I think a really exciting finding that is fairly unique, across industries, and I think even for the arts is even more. Is even higher than usual is the minimal economic leakage, or the amount that's being spent locally by artists and cultural organizations is really exciting from a sort of economic development perspective, and that the money is circulating in the community rather than being spent on goods imported from elsewhere, and that just means your multiplier, if you will, or the economic impact is far greater in that it circulates through the local economy more. So those are my two sort of favorite findings. Of course, I'm also encouraged by all the social findings, as Louisa touched on as well. But those are a couple of the quantitative findings that I think are very interesting.
Yeah, all huge findings. Really neat. So I'm going to welcome participants in the audience to stay with us if they'd like to dive a little deeper into this subject during the roundtable. And just take a moment to really thank again the Douglas Magazine for sponsoring this session, and to let the speakers know that this year all speakers will receive gifts of the Island Good gift box. So that's exciting. And then maybe we'll just shift into the roundtable. And people are allowed to just go up mute and ask questions, and we'll facilitate it that way. Or you're welcome to keep in the chat box, whatever makes sense for you. Okay. So building off, so let's just keep jumping off of that study. So Chad, what do you think we need to be thinking about now in order to update the study in a few years? Like, how do we keep this study really making sense and bringing value to the arts and business?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few things. I think, trying to maintain, especially some of the key metrics, as I said, this is quite a comprehensive report and ended up, being over 80 pages. So, it may not be feasible to do that every couple of years, but really thinking about what some of those key metrics are that you may want to track over time, is I think an exciting opportunity to keep it a bit more feasible and continue to track that impact. How is it changing? Of course, this is a 2019 study. We know that 2020 and sadly now into 2021 have not been great to the arts, and so looking at using that study as a benchmark, I think is really exciting. I think there's an opportunity to see where where it's potentially fallen over the past couple of years, and then sort of hopefully tracking it back up through recovery in the coming years. I think another important point as well is one of the most challenging parts of this research was sort of the outreach and getting a hold of people and getting survey respondents. So a big way the research can be maintained is really keeping in touch or maintaining databases, if you will, or lists of people, and encouraging people to participate and stay connected, because I think that really was in itself a sort of instrumental value was the amount of people that we were able to reach and encourage to reflect on the impact and the value that arts has to them, whether they be artists or cultural organizations or just community members, of which over 1,500 people participated. So I think that's also huge, is the more we can stay connected and maintain those sort of that contact information, the easier it can be, and then we can over time increase those who participate. Thinking about new audiences, it'd be great to include more youth in the study. As I pointed out in the presentation, it's certainly skewed to an older crowd, which again is not unique to Vancouver Island, especially relating to art studies. So thinking about what, who we've heard from and maybe who we can potentially hear from or include or really sort of focus on, in future iterations, I think is an exciting opportunity as well.
That's great. Thank you so much, Chad. Maybe I'll switch it up to Susan, representing the North Vancouver Island Art Society. What is the most challenging aspect of connecting arts and business in the North Island?
The North Island represents about 6 communities spread out over hundreds of square miles. Our biggest challenge is the technology. It's a good day if I've got one bar and I can make a phone call. So for us, it's the technology. So we're learning to use the Zoom functions that COVID brought us and all the other chat rooms, and we're starting to have virtual meetings and we're getting better at those. And so in the same way that it's a challenge for us to meet as artists, it's a challenge for us to meet as artists with businesses. And, so as the chair of Envious, I'm in the middle of collaborating with a number of organizations on a variety of projects and modeling that behavior for our various smaller groups that are located in our various communities. But certainly our number one challenge up here is technology.
Yeah. And I can see that could really play into engaging youth.
Yes.
in that continuing engaging youth as that, as you engage more in that enables, it's such a natural space for youth.
It is, yes.
Yeah. So how about if we go to Ken? If you had unlimited resources, what's the one thing you'd change or add to the arts ecosystem?
Sorry, I just had problems unmuting there. Yes, that's quite a question. It's a wide spectrum to answer. I have to say, I think the one of the greatest challenges that still exists, that has existed for some time, is political leadership and political will. As I mentioned earlier about listening and understanding other languages, and if you don't have strong political leadership and leadership that knows how to listen, they just get entrenched in their own, what I consider to be tired, outdated language. And this is a challenge, because without strong leadership at the political level, it can be very difficult to facilitate the kind of partnership discussions that are needed. Unfortunately, I don't know, well, dollars can certainly assist that, because the political machine runs on money. So injecting money into encouraging new candidates and educating candidates and educating voters takes time. It's a long, slow slog, but I think it's ultimately where change comes. Throwing money at infrastructure is great. I'm a great proponent of public art, but the political language sometimes is afraid of public art. When we use outdoor amenities, you might get a little bit more traction that way, but that will help. But again, without that political will at the top, it can be very difficult to gain forward momentum. There's a great desire to stay entrenched in what I would say outdated thinking and outdated industries, and understanding. And forestry is a very good one, because it's quite central to where I am in Campbell River. The language of forest leadership is very much about partnership and about being part of the community and standing shoulder to shoulder with the community to build a sustainable and positive future. I don't doubt that. However, that's not the language of our politicians here. The politicians here are still very much looking to have sectors like forestry be the only discussion, and the jobs and the job loss, etc. That's a very difficult hill to get over without constant engagement and constant discussion, and, as I say, community mobilization and education. So if I had unlimited resources, I would put it into the mechanization of the political process to educate a whole new youthful team of forward innovative thinkers and try to overcome this stale outmoded thinking that's sits in city councils, and some of these councillors have been here 20 years now, way past their best before date. So it's kind of a political answer, maybe not to the infrastructure answer that you're looking for, but it is connected.
Yeah. And do you feel, and I don't put this up to anyone as well, like, do you feel that COVID's had a positive effect on that political potential will?
No.
It feels that, okay.
No, I don't. I think COVID has had some very positive effects for what the arts community has done in terms of digital outreach and expanding audiences and being able to reach into areas that we had difficulty before, looking at people that are in hospitals or care homes and looking at outlying regions and more rural communities. What we can do here now with our investment in sort of new digital technologies, especially with our local theater, is remarkable. And I think it's here to stay because it just maximizes our reach for whatever we do. That's very positive. Has COVID had a positive effect on the political structure here? No. If anything, I think it's siloed it even worse and probably gone backwards.
Thanks, Ken. I want to get to Sasha here. Sasha.
Thank you. Hi from West Kelowna. First of all, I would like to applaud this initiative we relate to the initiative in two ways. We are a solution provider that supports economic development with using data, but also one of our co-founders is an artist, so there is definitely a connection. I was wondering, is there an intention to disseminate the results of the research to the general public and making some kind of, I don't know, data portal or whatever? So would the raw data be available for researchers, for economic development officers, for policymakers, and something like that? Because I think this example can be really great to lead to more researches like this in other communities too. Thanks.
I'll give that to Chad.
I can go ahead, assuming that one's to me. Yeah.
Yes.
It's a great question, Sasha. The full report of the findings is certainly available, and the data is all the questions have been analyzed in that. We haven't actually discussed making a raw data available. I can send you my email, and we can certainly maybe connect on that, Sasha, and talk about it. It's up to Dig in the end, really. They're the client. It's in theory their data. So but it is a good idea, and like I said, the results are certainly being shared. It's already been disseminated, and again, really wanting economic developers, tourism businesses to really engage with the findings, because as you said, Sasha, it is exciting, and there is an opportunity to use that as a benchmark either in the future or in other communities, and so thanks for asking that question.
So a little more onto that, I think the overarching vision for Creative Coast is to enable that to be able to happen. Not out of the box at this moment. We're working on a new funding proposal right now to be able to collect and organize more data and create those opportunities for sharing it in a meaningful way with those kind of other organizations. We're not quite there yet, but certainly would welcome partnerships and support in making that happen, because it's definitely part of the big vision that we have.
Thanks, Kara.
Thank you.
I'm going to go over to Ken Hammer.
Thanks, Kristi. I want to support Sasha's point. I think all this good information needs to be shared, and I think that needs to be, really thought of in a broad way, because I'm looking at the title of the session, and I still want to dig down into the magic that will happen where arts and business converge. And I understand that, the data does present a good case for arts and culture in terms of economic impact. And when I heard some of you, or some of the smaller points, and that's why I'm interested in seeing the data, I think there is some magic in there. And I'll just name a few things. One is, I think, the before and after spending. I think small business needs to understand that. And I don't think they do. So when there's an arts concert or, there's an arts exhibition or cultural thing going on, these small business benefit big time. The overall healthy or healthier employee that's engaged in art and culture, I mean, that's pretty clear. And the small business owner might want to know that we've got some great data to suggest you need to support the arts for these very good reasons. We know from your research and other research that art and culture attracts people to a community, even though they don't go to the theater, even though they don't go to the art gallery. Knowing that there's one there will attract employees to a community. I was a little disappointed to see that most of your respondents didn't believe that art and culture nurtures employment skills, because I actually heard that from some of the speakers that it actually does that. We need to get artists involved in small business. And the other point, it didn't show that people believe that art and culture is a big part of reconciliation. And I think when you pull out these nuggets that art and culture can help in reconciliation, can help nurture employment skills, I think we need to kind of build that from your data, that 2-pager, that we can then give to small business and they go, oh, there's the magic. So there's just some thoughts, and maybe I'll have some discussion outside of this, but I do think there is magic in your data. I'm just not sure we emphasize that. Thank you.
Yeah, just to say thanks, and that our as data wonks, policy wonks, we don't often we're not often told that our data is magical. So that is amazing, and I fully agree. I think there's a lot of power in some of that, and happy to chat further, as you said, Ken, on the sidelines, and what we may be able to do with that, because I agree, the more people that can lay eyes on some of those important findings, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, also adding to the thanks from Chad, I think also this is really the first step, and then the dissemination piece is what's happening now, and also something that needs to be built upon around, so we're hearing about all of these impacts, but is that something people necessarily associate with the arts? Like some people absolutely do, but some people really don't. So without wanting to use a kind of, I think to say to educate people can kind of come across as a bit patronizing, but I think it's just sharing information. Like you say, like how does it increase spending? Why is that important? And then also say with Creative Coast, for example, having the kind of, I don't want to say infrastructure, but you know what I mean? There's the connections there that people can connect with local arts councils and therefore connect with artists. I'd say that this is a new development, but it's really just at the beginning of where that could go. So it's exciting, but definitely a lot more to do as well.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to promote and support that, this art connection to business needs to be at the VHA Congress every year, or summit. So if we can kind of work forward the next idea or presentation, I think we need to.
We would welcome your support, Ken. How do we connect with you?
Maybe Ken can put his email address in the chat box. That would be great. And building on that, especially if there's a session next year. So what could we help from the data, or just from, expertise and experience here in our audience and in our panels? What's some low-hanging fruits for some wins between arts and businesses that you could achieve together and continue moving that, maybe that storytelling forward?
Can I speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, please.
I'm thinking that in the way that you showcase some of the case studies in the actual study that was done, maybe if we showcase some of the collaborative experiences that are going on in the island within the communities, and then between the arts councils and communities, that would be a way to model that behavior, and it's feel-good stories, and people could build on that and be inspired by that. And so that might be something for next year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously I was presenting the case study, so I'm slightly biased in thinking that case studies can be valuable, but I think that they can tell stories so effectively. And thinking about the kind of, well, I don't want to say easy wins because things tend to not be easy, but the low hanging fruit is we know that the arts play a huge role in community identity and making, increasing the uniqueness of the place. And there's many cases where that's already happening or has happened across the region in terms of like downtown renewal, whether that is in terms of like external physical spaces or even within a business incorporating artworks and distinct identity. Getting people together with artists to discuss different ideas and where things could go would be extremely valuable, because there's just so many ways in terms of like new events, performance spaces, whether they're indoor or outdoor in communities as well, like public spaces where people can meet. There are the much bigger infrastructural type questions, but then there's also much smaller wins which can happen just on a very small level with one business. But thinking about, say, Montreal, which is really embedding culture, a lot of that started around 2007, and that was with a meeting between the business and the cultural community, and that led to the development of a new strategy. So I think that there are all of these kind of more established low-hanging fruit type things which can happen, but really and looking to do something innovative, which also speaks to the unique culture of each place and the unique identity. I know that we've said that in lots of different ways, but it's about bringing people together to discuss ideas as we are now, but hopefully on a bigger scale with more regularity and, perhaps more in-depth conversations to think about using that kind of artistic vision to think more creatively about what could happen, not just what has happened that we can look at.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, I think it's important to note the sort of unique time and place and that we're in right now in terms of recovery, and the fact that arts really relates to some of the pieces of recovery that are sort of most important or have been, perhaps most devastated, whether it be downtown renewal, which is a priority in many cities across the region, or tourism, the recovery of that industry, which has of course been devastated. So I think it's important to note that, while this is always true, I think there's really a unique opportunity here in that there's a lot of, people rethinking things, and the need to think creatively is key right now more than ever. And a chance to include new voices at the table is there, I think.
I think just quickly, one of the lowest hanging fruit and simplest thing would be for the business community to ensure you're getting the information that's being disseminated by your local arts council. So go sign up for their newsletter, because they're pushing out their information all the time, and you might find something within that on a weekly or monthly basis that goes, "Ooh, that's the thing that I should be involved with," or "that really talks to my business," or "that's a really great partnership opportunity," because there isn't an arts council out there that wouldn't welcome you coming to them with an idea either, or with a suggestion of how you could work together.
Yeah, and I will really just add up. I'll just to remind us all about what Lynn from Island Coastal Economic Trust sort of said, that right now they have that opportunity, to be able to, tap into that $50,000 or I don't know all the details of it, so I don't want to speak, but she was just really talking about that. And that's what the government and business and artists coming together. So maybe there is an interesting, an opportunity with some financial resources on the side to support that could get people talking and at the table together and create something really neat.
Yeah, and just that's the Thrive program that ICE-T has put out, and Campbell River has just received it through one of our neighborhood associations here in Campbellton, and it is definitely on the right track. I think if we look at one of the major impacts of COVID, it has been the breaking of social connections, and the word connection has come up very often throughout this day and this presentation. And this is of course what the arts do, is that they connect people and they create connective tissue in communities. The Thrive funding has recognized that you do need infrastructures that can facilitate people to connect through, and I think it's a very forward-thinking program on Ice-T's part, and the agenda that's going to emerge here in Campbell River has recognized that these outdoor amenities or these social gathering spots that are infrastructure based are the kinds of impetus that we need to start reconnecting people in new and innovative, creative ways. So I really think Ice-T's on the right track with that Thrive program.
Thanks, Ken. Now I want to get to Julie Sperber.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to echo what Ken said earlier. I would love to see more arts and economy sessions at Bahia in the future. And as the executive director of Gabriola Island, which Karen Bannister gave us a shout out, so thanks to Karen for that as well, we see that interconnection really quite clearly in our community. So I work in tandem with the arts director, the executive director of the Arts Council here as well. And in terms of those relationship building pieces, art is a way to build relationship in economy, but also through reconciliation. And so I think that's a really valuable point as well. And then finally, we're developing a program to help disseminate the information that we need the business community and the arts community to overlap and both have access to. So Carol Ferguson, the ED at Gabriel Arts Council, and I are looking at doing a program that is called The Art of Business and the Business of Art together over the winter. And it'll be for both the sides of the community, both the business community and then of course the artists as well. So thanks very much. It's been a great session to be part of.
So Julie, if people wanted to connect with you just about that or learn more or see how they could support, could you put your email address in the chat box?
Sure.
Thanks for sharing that. That's excellent. Jacqueline.
Yeah, it's quick, and it was that comment about what might be easy, and I think it's obvious and easy, although it'll always be harder. Is that just the connection, which both Ken and Julie have alluded to, but the structural connection between the Art Society and the Chamber of Commerce. Like, we're on the islands, as Julie is the little islands, so very small communities. There's no reason that they can't, work tighter together. And I think it would make huge difference. Listening, lots of listening, like Ken said.
Okay, so we got questions right now, or let's go, we've got some different hurdles. What's the biggest hurdle you face in champion art policy and culture plans with the city?
I can speak just quickly to that. Here in the Comox Valley, we have 4 municipal governments to work with. That can prove to be a little challenging in ensuring everybody gets to the table, has a good conversation. We're making inroads in the last couple of years, which has been fantastic. And we're super excited about the progress that we are making. But it definitely creates some hurdles when you have 4 different municipal structures to work with in your region. As opposed to
is it then maybe it's a yes and yes, trying to work with the city, but also then with all the chambers and the business associations and things like that, would a more closer relationship with business community make it easier or broader in scope?
That's a really good question. I feel like it would be easier to gain the support for policy when there's business support of the arts that's vocal and visible. But again, like Ken was saying, a lot of it comes down to political will. Here in the city of Courtenay, we have some fantastic support with the current council, much better than it has been in previous decades. And same with the regional district. We're still working at making inroads through the town of Comox, and we have a lot of work still to do with the Comox First Nation as far as creating a really fluid dialogue and open channels of communication for how we can work with them to support their creative community as well, and integrate really well and do the work that is required around reconciliation.
Yeah, I think if I can just jump in, I think another challenge or hurdle is, it always comes back to education, I suppose, but something that we don't spend enough time talking about is the relationship between public and private space within communities. And there's, you know, the type of fluidity that could be between public and private space isn't there in general. There tends to be a barrier or a division. And there tends to be a thinking, well, public is, you know, something the government will do whatever, and private will do what we want, without kind of coming together and recognizing that these spaces are seamless for the average person that doesn't really know when they're transitioning from public to private. And in fact, it's like the atmosphere. You know, if a factory in China is going into the air just as much as a factory in Canada, it's one atmosphere. Well, there is one you know, sort of space within communities, and that relationship between public and private needs a lot of work, and policy can help do that. The support of the business community can do that. And again, local politicians and city councilors can play a big role within that. And I do have to just quickly say that I did not mean to paint all councilors and mayors with the same brush when I was attacking the need for political education. We have some excellent councilors in this community, and I adore our mayor here as well. So it's not everybody, but it is still to say that the education is needed in terms of policy, but in terms of understanding how space operates within a community and what the division is there between public-private. We need to spend a lot of time talking about that.
I wanted to just recognize I didn't get as far as mentioning, oh, sorry, geez, Louise, shush. That Cumberland is also within the Comox Valley, obviously, and they have incredible collaboration between arts business and the village of Cumberland there. I believe they also just got or are applying for a Thrive grant to create this really awesome area in downtown with art and improving business, and it just sounds great. I just heard about it yesterday, so. But
one thing to add just quickly as well, you know, we do a lot of cultural planning at Nordicity, working with communities across the country, and one thing that's often the very first hurdle is sort of making the case for culture or arts and why it matters, or what the value is, and why people should pay attention. And I think, you know, there's a unique opportunity in right now in that, you know, the case is there, the impact study is there, and so there's, you know, that sort of first hurdle can sort of, you know, be less than maybe it is in other cases where, you know, there's often a lot of resistance as to, you know, sort of why does this matter, or the arts, is it worth it, or, you know, what is the return on investment or impact that it's making. So I think you know, it's important to point out that is often a hurdle, but you know, maybe an opportunity for it to be less so now.
I've got just one more hurdle to add, and I think that when we do business, like, you know, so think of, you know, the industry might be driving a business proposition to do tourism and to have a collective identity. But as soon as you start rounding up into a region or a collective, where, you know, there's a cultural barrier with sort of a more creative, independent, diverse kind of view of it. And so I think that's a hurdle that we're just starting to face now, seeing that, oh, it's not so easy to just all say, okay, we're going to do this and we're going to work together. And I think that's one of the strengths of what I like about DIG and the evolution to the new organization, is that this is the art community trying to, you know, really trying to pull their collective powerhouse together. And I think that'll make a difference.
Do you see places where art needs to really rise up and get louder and more visible to help move the needle on this?
I really like, from my experience in the community.
Yeah, for like the economic development, or from the business perspective, like, what role can art play? And really, you know, sometimes when you're loud and you're quite visible, you actually get to the table in a different way, you know, and you just become a force that can't be ignored, in a sense. So is there ways that art can rise up and be louder and more visible to help support a transition to have that magic between art and business?
I think so. And I think one of the keys comes back to that word connection. And one of the key things is for the arts to facilitate an understanding of the relationships between not just your business development, but your social development, and to see them as intertwined. Economic development is not independent of social development downtown. We're, communities are facing it with, homeless challenges now, or opioid crisis, just generally inequities with poverty. These are dynamics that affect your economic development. They are all economic. And too often we silo the discussion with economics just in terms like business terms or in industry's vocabulary, forgetting that our social structures are a great drag in some cases, but if attended to with resources and with compassion and empathies, if we attend to these things, they actually promote positive economic development. And this is something that this connection or this relationship between sectors, whether it's social sector, economic sector, cultural sector, are absolutely enmeshed in how we can define what a healthy economy is. And that discussion has to be at the table. And the arts are excellent at facilitating that discussion because they're enmeshed in all of those sectors, working on the front lines, with health, working on homelessness, working in education systems, working in hospitals, working with healthcare workers, with children, with seniors, with families. That is our world. We work interconnectedly and we understand the relationships between these sectors. So, but that's not generally true within the economic sector. It sometimes silos itself off. So I think the discussion for positive development and the arts can play a role is to facilitate roundtable discussions, community discussions, and start to make the links so that hopefully the ball can drop for people that have the potential to influence the economic side of things.
Thanks, Ken. We at the summit, there's been some conversation about that donut economy. And when I sort of view it, what I see is I don't necessarily see art in there. So I wanted to know if Chad, maybe you could sort of speak to how do you sort of see arts filling into this concept of a donut economy?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lots of ways, but it's not necessarily included as one of those pieces of the social foundation, the 10 or so that are there. But in a way, it's really across pretty much all of them, maybe except for water. But in terms of health, as Louisa touched on, 98%, saying that it's critically important for health and well-being, education, peace and justice, political voice, social equity, all of these, things that we know art can be really important in enabling critical thinking and social discourse. And so I think really, you can see it across a lot of those pieces of the social foundation. I think also, as Lime mentioned and others have mentioned, it certainly is a sustainable industry as well. It's not extractive and overly taxing on the environment. So I think that's also, it finds itself in that sort of safe and just space for humanity, as the donut is called. And so I think that's a sort of key way in which it fits in the donut. And I think another key piece that's quite interesting and picking up on the conversation yesterday was, even just hearing the amount of times that they talked about how creativity is needed to address some of these problems and find some of these solutions, and touching back on the presentation by the architect in that, artists bring a different way of thinking, a solutions oriented, very creative, thinking outside the box, which really, if we're going to have any chance at not destroying the donut or going, overshooting, as it says in the graphic, I think these sort of creative solutions are required, and the arts can be a driver for that, with artists and creative people bringing new ideas to the table. So, without certainly claiming to be an expert on the donut economy, which is truly fascinating and very cool to see what Nanaimo's, with Nanaimo prioritizing that, that's where I see it fit in. But I'm sure others have ideas as well.
Well, I think you did a great job on that, that Chad, wrapping that up. So that's really wonderful. I will add this last question here. We're a small business who works with and supports the arts through various ways. I believe in the arts, having our kids participate in various arts and have been involved myself. It's a long one. So it is great in terms of what it can add to the social fabric in our community and our business. However, it's very challenging working with arts. I find that they can be sometimes disjointed, price sensitive, and not always understanding of our business in a way that's working both ways. I'm not sure how to engage the broader arts community. So we have focused on individuals who work cooperatively with us. Any suggestions on how to engage? I know Kara also mentioned the Art Council for sure, and Ken?
Invite them for a coffee. You know, just sit down and have a chat one-on-one, whether it's a council, whether it's a gallery with a theater. Like, there's so many entry points. I think we need to be cautious sometimes to just classify the arts as one amorphous blob that's out there that's all the same. It's not. Like any healthy sector, it's full of diversity, and it's complex. And the best way to approach it is to pick up the phone and have a coffee and have a one-on-one chat and just explore. You may not get the right person, but there's plenty of other people out there to talk. Just keep going. You will resonate with someone at some point, and that's a positive discussion. And I have to just add, it's in many conferences I've attended, the same question comes up about reaching out to First Nations. You know, I don't know how to reach out to the band. I'm afraid of making mistakes, or, you know, I don't know what the protocols are, etc. And people put up barriers to something that's actually not very complex. And it's the same answer: pick up the phone or drop in and make an appointment and just have a chat. I'm very close to many First Nations in this community here, and it's bewildering. Why would people hesitate to just come and chat? Don't worried about making a mistake about what? So we have to sometimes break down these preconceived either biases or barriers or preconceptions that we have of what a sector is or who people are. And I honestly think it's a simple solution: have a chat. Talk with them, express how you feel, and see how it goes. And if nothing else, well, get the artist to buy the coffee and you got a free coffee out of it. I don't know. But
Thanks,
I don't think it needs to be complicated.
Okay. Well, that's really interesting. We can start to see where the magic is going to happen, and fantastic on the data that helps support this and is able to share and start some different conversations between art and business, and really look forward to seeing how that continues. And we're wrapping up right now from this session, and I just want to really thank everybody for their input and all they brought and the work that was done to put the session together. And thanks, Vaia, for having this conversation. And it sounds like there's a lot of people hoping that it continues next year.
As I just want to make one quick little point, and that is that from an arts perspective, it's not so much that we want you to reach out and say, hey, we've got money for you, or anything like that. Like Ken said, it's really important for us to have just conversations to find out who each other is and what we're doing and where we can fit together. It doesn't have to at all even revolve around the money part, which is a really big hurdle, I think, in a lot of people's minds, especially small business, because they're hurting right now. And you don't have to come to us and say, can I sponsor your show? How about, where can we fit? Or is there something that you can do for us? Because we have lots and lots of talent and people who are really interested in participating in creating a better community and creating healthier and more vital communities, and working with business to improve all the different things that they have to offer as well, especially when it comes to downtown and bringing people into stores or into activities that are going on. Artists are really happy to work with business and not just be the recipients of the cash. They do like to get paid, however, so we advocate that well, but it's a whole different dynamic that needs to be created.
And it sounds like the more we can come together, it's more we find that common language, those common problem solving and common solutions together. So thanks everyone. Thanks again, Island Good for their speaker gifts, for the gift boxes, and for Douglas Magazine for sponsoring this session. Enjoy your lunch and have a great day. And enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thanks everyone.